It's 2 a.m. again. The blue light burns against half-closed eyes, and your phone screen glows with another promise of transformation. 10 habits that will change your life. You tell yourself just a few more minutes, just one more insight, as if clarity could be downloaded and discipline could be borrowed. You scroll between endless advice and half-finished plans. Among alarms, you'll reset tomorrow with the same rising guilt swelling quietly in your chest. That's a quiet agony of modern ambition, moving faster but going nowhere, staring into your potential like it's behind glass. You have not failed for lack of trying. You're drowning in trying. Modern life has become a carousel of momentum without direction. Motion falsely dresses mastery. You chase consistency as if it were a tactic, when it has always been an identity. You wake motivated, crash exhausted, rebuild the same tower every Monday until fragments of self-resentment cling to the foundation. Motivation peaks, discipline dies, guilt repeats. And the louder the noise of productivity culture becomes, the harder it is to hear your own internal rhythm. They told you consistency was about willpower, about grind, about crushing resistance until your spirit bent into submission. But ancient warriors knew different truths. They understood that no man sustains what isn't aligned with who he is. The samurai did not wake up and decide to be disciplined. They lived as the embodiment of discipline itself. Their constancy wasn't a performance. It was an extension of identity. You don't fail at habits. You fail at being who sustains them. That is a hidden wound beneath modern inconsistency, the fracture between how you act and who you believe you are. The West calls it laziness. Eastern thought calls it disharmony. Every fragment of distraction you feed deepens that internal split until effort becomes suffering and rest feels shameful. We live intoxicated by potential but allergic to process. Our culture burned the candle on both ends, driven by comparison, rewarded by illusion. Each notification promises purpose, yet delivers emptiness. We are men haunted by the weight of what we could be, yet paralyzed by the thousand invisible pulls of what the world demands we seem to be. Consistency crumbles not because we lack energy, but because we scatter it across 100 hollow pursuits. The modern man is overstimulated but underfulfilled, trained to sprint in all directions yet never arrive. He mistakes activity for progress, novelty for growth, and exhaustion for achievement. But beneath that chaos lies an untapped stillness, an ancient memory of simplicity. The samurai woke before dawn, not to battle distraction, but to align breath, posture, and presence into one silent readiness. They moved deliberately, not frantically. Their perfection came from patience, not pressure. While today's world obsesses over optimization, they revered rhythm. Where we obsess over speed, they kneel before precision. And that difference is everything. One exhausts energy, the other renews it. One fractures the self, the other forges it. So look closely at this fatigue you call failure. It's not proof you are weak, it's proof you are misaligned. Somewhere along the way, your identity detached from your actions, leaving you chasing results that no longer represent you. Maybe you've built routines that don't feel sacred, only strategic. Maybe every act of self-improvement feels like punishment disguised as purpose. Yet within that recognition lives your doorway forward, the realization that consistency begins not with discipline, but with self-definition. Who you are will always outlast what you intend. Tonight, as your phone screen dims and silence presses against your thoughts, imagine shedding every borrowed idea of success. Listen to the quiet hum beneath the noise, that forgotten pulse of presence. When you can hear it again, you can begin. The modern struggle is not against chaos outside, it is against separation within. And to repair it, we must step back into the still ground where every true warrior once began. The noise fades, the rhythm slows, and the storm of alerts dissolves into the soft sound of rain. You have arrived at the threshold, the place before motivation, the origin of discipline. There is a silence so total that it feels alive. Within that silence, footsteps echo softly across wooden floors polished by centuries of repetition. No clocks, no notifications, only the sound of breath meeting movement. This is a temple of stillness, where peace is not decoration, it is discipline. The monks do not train to achieve enlightenment as one collects a trophy. They train until the line between training and being dissolves completely. Each sweep of the broom, each bow before the statue, each measured inhalation is perfection in miniature, practiced endlessly without the burden of progress. You can almost hear the paradox breathing through the holes. If you chase results, the path escapes you. The modern world hustles for outcomes. Zen dissolves into process. Hey, discipline looks nothing like the brutal grind our culture worships. It is gentle yet relentless, a rhythm so steady it humbles ambition. Western thought treats practice as a road to mastery. Zen sees practice as the expression of it. The master does not become disciplined. He has simply forgotten what it means not to be. Consistency, in this realm, is not forced repetition but continuity of attention. The monks call it Guoji, the practice without gap, the undivided state where intention and action fuse into one seamless motion. Imagine pressing brush to paper. In Guoji, there is no hesitation between seeing and painting. The moment thought arises, should I, when will I, am I ready, the sacred unity cracks, and the act becomes mechanical. Guoji is the antidote to fragmentation. The art of living is one continuous line. The world tells you to push harder, to exert, to overpower, to discipline yourself by sheer will. Zen tells you to disappear into the act. The power lies not in conquest, but in surrender. This is why monks repeat the same chore for 50 years without boredom. Every leaf swept, every bowl washed, every bell rung is the same form manifesting afresh. They don't seek novelty, they seek depth. Depth is infinite, novelty endless but shallow. The Zen craftsman doesn't wonder how much time remains. He wonders how much presence remains in this instant. To live this way is to experience consistency as freedom, the dissolving of friction between thought and motion. And here lies the first great contrast with modern productivity. The driven man of today attacks his task with clenched fists, measuring worth by accumulation. He keeps score, but his heart races against the scoreboard. The monk wakes with no scoreboard at all, yet his every act refines spirit and structure. The difference is not laziness or passion, it is posture. The Zen practitioner aligns through stillness. The ambitious man splinters through striving. Kaizen, the quiet Japanese idea of 1% daily betterment, is not about progress bars, it's a devotional loop. Small, consistent act repeated until they carry their own gravity. The improvement is invisible, yet inevitable, as water shapes stone not by force but constancy. To enter this temple mentally is to confront your addiction to effort. You realize your body has memoized tension. It twitches to fill silence, to prove worth. But when you stop chasing, effort finally finds harmony. In that stillness, something new occurs, resistance evaporates. The Zen word for it is mu, emptiness, nothingness, the moment when the mind stops separating itself from task. When you reach mu, there is no you meditating, no you writing, no you working. There is simply breath becoming movement. It is terrifying at first, because control fades. Yet that surrender is where consistency truly begins, where the will ceases its battle and becomes a current. Imagine holding your entire life in that awareness. No fight with distraction, no inner lecture, only alignment so precise that every act reinforces who you are. This is what the samurai carried from temple to battlefield. The certainty that stillness is not the absence of action, it is perfect action. The novice obsesses over how to perform. The master performs without self. From this emptiness rises a purest power, a discipline that doesn't strive. It simply is. The temple doors close behind you now. The silence remains. But in the distance, the faint rhythmic sound of bamboo striking will begin to echo. Stillness sharpens into movement. The monk's breath becomes a warrior's heartbeat. The scene shifts from the quiet hall to the training ground, where stillness will be tested by steel and survival. Miyamoto Musashi's legend does not begin with glory. It begins with dust and repetition. A boy born into conflict, wielding a wooden sword heavier than his arm could bear, fighting shadows long before he fought men. He rose not through divine talent, but through obsessive refinement, hundreds of duels, thousands of silent mornings, single strokes practice until identity and blade were inseparable. He wasn't fueled by inspiration. He was possessed by attention. While the world seeks passion, Musashi sought precision. He famously said he never struck the same way twice, not because he craved novelty, but because his awareness was absolute, no moment identical to another, no movement unconscious. His life was proof that discipline, when embodied, becomes instinct. Bushidō, the way of the warrior, was not a dogma carved into stone. It was a code etched into daily breath. Loyalty, honor, and courage were less commandments and alignments, the invisible scaffolding that allowed men to operate with calm amid chaos. The samurai knew that outer violence required inner stillness. Before each duel, Musashi would center himself in the same silent truth. The opponent across from him was merely a mirror reflecting his own disarray. Skill could conquer others. Presence alone conquered fear. In every swing of his sword, there was an echo of prayer, a rhythm of composure so deep that even death could not shake it. Contrast that with a modern grind-set warrior, a man who attacks each day as if life were a scoreboard and validation were victory. His sword is a smartphone. His battlefield is his to-do list. His war cry is a notification sound that promises meaning but delivers emptiness. He moves fast but never lands. He hustles loudly but stands nowhere. Musashi would have seen this frenzy for what it is, motion without purpose, intensity without soul. He trained as if eternity were hidden in a single repetition, while the modern man trains as if quantity could purchase peace. The samurai sought unity between spirit and strike. The hustler seeks dopamine between distractions. One sharpens the soul, the other frays it. Musashi's secret weapon was practice stripped of ego, the concept the Japanese call kata. A kata is a sequence, a deliberate repetition of form refined endlessly until movement becomes meditation. Every warrior repeated the same motion for years, sometimes decades, not to impress, but to dissolve the need for thought. The kata mentality is the opposite of motivation. It is what remains when motivation dies. To perform a kata correctly, you must surrender your need to finish and learn to inhabit the movement completely. This is also the purest form of freedom. Through form, find freedom. The samurai believed that only in constraint could one access infinity. The modern man avoids repetition because he mistakes it for boredom, yet it is through the repetition of precision that mastery sneaks quietly into the soul. Picture Musashi's day. He rises before dawn, sweeps his space, tends to his sword. No grand declarations, no morning playlists, no boast of productivity. He begins each sunrise with humility, acting as though he knows nothing. Every small movement, adjusting a sandal strap, filling a teapot, drawing his blade, is a ritual of alignment. The pattern of these simple acts creates momentum beyond willpower. Consistency isn't a metric. It's a state of being earned through devotion to rhythm. The samurai's stillness in chaos was not trained in battlefields, but in the ordinary repetitions of a quiet morning. His secret wasn't the sword, it was how he lived with it. Now carry that principle to the present. You may not wield a blade, but your rituals are your weapons. The cold shower you take each morning, the journal you fill, the weights you lift, the focus how you defend from distraction, these are not chores but modern katas. When done consciously, they carve grooves in your identity, teaching your nervous system to return to precision regardless of chaos. Perform them not as self-punishment, but as ceremony. Each repetition whispered softly to yourself, "This is who I am." Through these forms, you remember your own freedom. Musashi's duels were not with people, they were with hesitation. You face the same enemy today. Every time resistance rises and you move anyway, you are cutting through illusion. You are the swordsman returning home, reuniting thought and action, restoring Guoji within the storm of modern life. To live this way is to understand that mastery is not about endless growth, but about ceaseless return. A return to posture, to breath, to center. As the story of Musashi fades into that long corridor of history, the echo remains, a single figure sheathing his sword beneath an open sky, eyes calm, footsteps unhurried. The blade returns to its sheath, untouched by glory yet perfectly alive. And we are left wondering, if such discipline was born in war, how do we summon it in peace? If lessons live only in battle, how do we train in the ordinary world? The scene drifts back to now, the modern warrior at his desk, surrounded by screens, gripping the hilt of his digital sword. The war is still here, but so is the way. There comes a point when your grind turns against you, when the thing that once gave you purpose starts to hollow you out. You wake heavy, not because you haven't slept, but because your mind is full of unfinished motions, tabs open like open wounds, dozens of tasks half done, dopamine splinters, scattered across every thought. You keep telling yourself tomorrow you'll get organized, tomorrow you'll slow down, tomorrow you'll be consistent. But tomorrow never comes, because you're trapped in what could be called the oscillation loop, brief bursts of inspiration, followed by exhaustion, followed by guilt, followed by yet another desperate restart. It is a modern cycle of effort, intensity mistaken for progress, struggle mistaken for strength. You're fighting battles that regenerate faster than you can win them, rebuilding resolve like sand castles between waves. The modern warrior collapses, not for lack of fire, but from pouring that fire into too many directions. Every alert on his phone steals a fraction of his attention. Every quick fix siphons energy. His focus is hacked, his peace auctioned to algorithms trained to provoke craving. Neurochemically, he is enslaved, not in chains, but in chemical loops of dopamine and anticipation. The more he consumes, the less he feels. The more he strives, the less he moves. This is not weakness, it's architecture. The modern system is built to fragment. Everything screams for urgency, but nothing sustains. We are taught to react faster, pose quicker, think louder. Yet the samurai knew the opposite truth. The man who moved without stillness bends his blade against the wind. You've been told if you just grind harder, you'll break through. But the harder you push, the deeper you slip into unseen fatigue. The metrics rise while meaning declines. You measure your worth in hours logged, yet your energy leaks like water through your hands. You mistake forward motion for advancement, forgetting that whirlpools spin too. There's irony here. Men today suffer burnout doing far less physically than their ancestors, yet 1,000 times more mentally. The mind that never rests never recharges. The act of being on all the time slowly teaches a nervous system that peace is danger. And so, rest becomes guilt, silence becomes discomfort, stillness becomes fear. But stopping, paradoxically, is not losing momentum, it is restoring it. Zen masters have always known that tension without recovery destroys rhythm. A sword kept under constant pressure cracks. One kept clean and rested remains sharp for decades. The same principle governs your focus. Modern productivity worships acceleration, but mastery bows to pacing. The world says, speed up to win. Musashi says, be still to strike true. The man who rushes dulls his precision. The man who breathes returns to accuracy. True consistency does not come from overextension, but from alignment. Energy deployed from center, not scattered from panic. Think of a bow drawn too tight. At first, the string hums with power, but hold it there and it warps, weakens, snaps. The archer who knows his craft draws and releases in cycles, tension and calm forming a continuum. This is how rhythm is born, not in endless strain, but in intelligent motion. The samurai trained this way because they understood energy as a sacred resource. Every movement, every breath, was measured not in speed, but in necessity. They didn't waste motion. They didn't live for adrenaline highs. They lived for precision. That absence of waste created permanence, an unbreakable loop of calm intensity. Now look at your own life. The tools are sophisticated, but the mind operating them is slipping further from sovereignty. You sprint through emails while eating breakfast, scroll through goals while half asleep, inhale content between tasks to keep the illusion of movement alive. Your mind has lost its single point of aim. Yet deep down you can feel the truth vibrating beneath the static. You don't need more willpower. You need alignment. You don't need more time. You need wholeness. Consistency was never a moral test. It's a structural one. Your habits crumble not because you are weak, but because you have built them upon fractured ground. When your structure is scattered, your energy leaks through the cracks. So pause. Feel your breath entering your body. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, stop trying. The silence feels strange, but this is what regeneration sounds like. Stillness is not absence. It is a forge where true motion is born. The modern man fights burnout by adding more, when the cure is subtraction. Stop grasping. Start grounding. The moment you choose stillness, you are no longer collapsing. You are consolidating. Stillness is a turning point of all mastery. And now, from that collapse, a quiet blueprint begins to appear. Drums fade to a slower rhythm. The pulse steadies. The storm of urgency thins to morning air. Through the window of your own life, dawn returns, not dramatic, just soft and steady. A cup of tea steams beside a notebook. There is no panic, no rush, only presence. The warrior's breathing calms, his eyes clear, his posture straightens. The collapse was not the end, it was a purification. From here, his structure can finally be rebuilt not on effort, but on equilibrium. If the collapse was death, This is rebirth, the construction of a new rhythm upon which discipline can stand without shaking. What follows are not tricks, not fleeting habits, but foundations. The ancients called them pillars because they do not move. The modern man calls them systems because he has forgotten the difference between structure and soul. Both terms point to the same truth. What is repeated becomes real. Consistency is not a product of intensity but of identity made visible through rhythm. These pillars reveal that order is not an accident. It is a result of conscious architecture. Pillar I, internal Kaizen, the 1% flow. Kaizen means continuous improvement, a philosophy birthed from the small and the sacred. The samurai never spoke of giant leaps. They worshipped quiet increments, polishing the same action until imperfection had nothing left to feed on. For them, there was no finish line, only an endless curve upward and inward. The act of sharpening a blade daily was less about the sword and more about the mind that wields it. Even a single grain removed from the edge was progress. The lesson is almost embarrassingly simple. Greatness does not erupt, it accumulates. The modern man, wired for instant verification, despises this truth. He wants transformation to be cinematic. But mastery is monotone, built one clean repetition at a time. Internal Kaizen is an ongoing conversation with yourself that replaces judgment with observation. When you live by Kaizen, you stop asking, "Did I win today?" and start asking, "Did I move 1% closer?" This removes the theater of self-criticism and replaces it with steady growth. The practice tool for this is what the Japanese call keiko, your daily vow of practice, performed with reverence, not urgency. It could be meditation, journaling, training, reading, any act repeated until sacredness emerges. Done truthfully, it is not just practice, it is prayer through motion. Your keiko does not impress the world, it rebuilds you. The greatest lie of modern improvement is that understanding equals change. We read, reflect, plan meticulously, and still stare at our own inaction. Guoji is a Zen discipline of no gap, the merging of intention and execution into a single seamless gesture. The gap between knowing and doing is where the modern man leaks his life force. He intends to write but scrolls instead, intends to stand but negotiates with fatigue, intends to stop but builds altars of delay. Guoji ends at fragmentation with an elegant rule, the immediate move principle. The moment you decide, you act, even if the motion is microscopic. Decide to run? Stand up instantly. Decide to read? Open the page before your doubt organizes a meeting. This micro-movement reprograms identity faster than analysis ever could. Guoji eliminates resistance by refusing to fuel it. The samurai understood that hesitation is not harmless, it multiplies. The space between intent and movement breeds fear, and fear unfulfilled turns inward as shame. When you inhabit Guoji, there is no time for that spiral. The act itself becomes meditation, moodless and decisionless. Every modern system designed to motivate you fails for this reason. It treats action as secondary to emotion. Guoji reverses it. Action births emotion. Move first, feel later, and discipline becomes your default state. Pillar 3. Bushidō integrity. Honor the promise to self. The code of Bushidō ran deeper than combat. It was moral alignment carved into marrow. Honor, loyalty, and courage were more than virtues. They were forms of respect for one's own word. The modern age has diluted commitment to convenience. The phrase "maybe tomorrow" has become a personal creed. But to a samurai, one unattended promise was spiritual decay. To break your word to others was shameful. To break your word to yourself was death. Integrity meant your words defined your reality, not just described it. Bushidō integrity invites you to reinterpret willpower not as effort, but as loyalty. When you consider skipping a workade, procrastinating on a project, or betraying a vow, you are not weighing options. You're deciding who you are. Each small act of inconsistency fractures self-trust, and self-trust is a fuel that sustains consistency. The man who cannot rely on himself lives in permanent chaos, forever outsourcing strength to exposure video dopamine or the illusion of external accountability. Reclaiming Bushidō means making an oath to yourself that feels sacred. Speak less, promise less, deliver completely. The samurai's code can live quietly in you. My word, even to myself, is law. From that oath comes effortless confidence, the kind that requires no announcement. Pillar 4, Zanshin, the state after the strike. The final pillar guards the aftermath, the moments after victory, completion, or effort. Zanshin means the remaining mind, the awareness that lingers once the action is finished. For a samurai, Zanshin after the strike was as critical as the strike itself. A swordsman who relaxed too early would die mid-breath. But beyond battle, Zanshin symbolizes emotional continuity, remaining present after the task to seal learning, rather than collapsing into distraction. In today's language, Zanshin is the art of graceful closure. You wake, you finish, and then what? Most people, once done, immediately dive into numbing habits, endless scrolling, snack, noise. The momentum leaks because the mind unravels. Practice Zanshin by ending with awareness. When work is finished, remain still for a moment. Reflect briefly. Journal a line. Close rituals matter because they anchor the memory of control. In that pause, your nervous system registers success. Your body learns what full completion feels like, and repetition solidifies it into instinct. The samurai would sheath his sword slowly, breathe out, and reset posture before walking away. You can do the same. Close the laptop with intention. Stretch, exhale. Completion should not dissolve into chaos, but descend into calm. Consistency, then, is not a battle against distraction. Distraction is only noise. Structure is a melody that outlasts it. Kaizen teaches you to revere micro-progress. Guoji removes the delay between aim and motion. Bushidō binds you to self-trust. Zanshin preserves the state of mastery after every effort. Together they form a closed circuit, a living loop of self-sustaining rhythm. When built this way, you cannot fall off because there is nowhere to fall from. You are carried by a framework that honors the same timeless law the warriors live by. Simplicity breeds sustainability. The world will continue to spin faster, and you will remain unmoved. Your days will look almost uneventful to outsiders. Small routines, steady repetitions, quiet endings, but within those micro-movements lies permanence. Through these pillars, you remember what the ancients always knew. Routine is higher technology, patience is superior progress, and stillness contains motion soul. Days pass in gentle evolution. The man who once chased motivation now constructs momentum. His actions synchronize, his breath slows, his gaze steadies. Life ceases to be a series of disconnected sprints and becomes one long, flowing practice. Yet, on this path, resistance always returns. Even the strongest structure will be tested, for transformation without friction is theory. And so, as the cycle of discipline deepens, the next confrontation emerges not against the world, but against the whisper of doubt that hides within. No matter how steady the rhythm, there always comes a day when silence feels heavy again. You wake later than planned, skip your ritual, drift into distraction, and suddenly the old voice returns, the whisper that says, "See, nothing's changed. You'll fall off again." It doesn't yell, it crawls. It slides into your thoughts wearing reason's disguise, folding disappointment into cold inevitability. This is the hidden battlefield most never master, the internal war that begins not with failure itself, but with interpretation of failure. After days, weeks, perhaps months of disciplined alignment, doubt surfaces like smoke rising from the cracks. The question is not whether you falter, but what meaning you assign when you do. Modern perfectionism calls it collapse. Zen calls it weather. The samurai had their own name for this encounter with imperfection. They called it Kenshi no Kokoro, the heart of the sword saint, the capacity to remain composed after loss. To lose once but learn forever. When Musashi wrote of 40 duels before finding peace in victory, he wasn't glorifying conquest. He was confessing that mastery requires losing yourself many times to discover what cannot be broken. The difference between the ordinary man and the disciplined one is not that one never errs, it's that one converts each mistake into refinement. The undisciplined drown in guilt. The disciplined transmute guilt into greater precision. So when relapse arrives, treat it as ritual, not failure. Sit with it. Observe it like a monk watching clouds pass. You will notice sensations, a tightening chest, the stories forming. I ruined everything. Breathe into those sensations. Zen acceptance means noticing without lawsuit, acknowledging without judgment. In that breath, the loop breaks. You no longer identify as a failure. You become the observer repairing alignment. Through patience, you discover a truth so few masculine minds grasp. Discipline is not brutality. It is compassion wearing armor. A warrior doesn't scream at his injured comrade. He binds a wound and stands guard until healing begins. That same patience must be directed inward. There is no strength in self-attack, only wasted blood. Modern perfectionism destroys growth because it mistakes flawlessness for integrity. But perfectionism is ego in disguise, a form of pride that cannot accept process. It demands a harvest daily while ignoring the soil's nature. The disciplined man, however, honors the seasons. He understands inconsistency not as proof of weakness, but as evidence of human rhythm. Spring, summer, fall, winter, each cycle brings its necessity. The dormant phase is not regression, it's replenishment. Like the samurai pausing after battle to clean his armor, you must pause after failure to clean perception. Quietly restore your robe of stillness. Remember the code, lose once, learn forever. Each time you fall and rise consciously, the ground beneath becomes sturdier. As the protagonist of this story, this mirror realigns himself. We watch the shift unfold. He does not wrestle against a relapse. He studies it. He breathes through guilt until it shrinks into data. The doubt that once owned him becomes inventory. He re-enters his rituals slowly, adjusting posture, returning to his keiko, reclaiming Guoji through one simple action performed instantly yet calmly. In this subtle recommitment, something irreversible happens. Discipline ceases to be something he does and becomes something he is. His previous structure no longer requires emotion to run. It breathes autonomously. He is not getting back on track. He is the track. Consistency rebounds once it is reframed as identity rather than streak. Streaks die, identities endure. The man obsessed with counting days will always restart. The man who embodies his code carries it through interruption like breath itself. This is a true victory over doubt, to recognize that the blade does not lose sharpness simply because it rests in its sheath. You are still a warrior, even in stillness, perhaps especially in stillness. Dawn begins to lighten the horizon. The breath you control steadies. The air smells of renewal. The man once tormented by relapse now watches birds cut through morning mist, a soft half-smile forming as a lesson sinks deeper than intellect. He need not chase consistency anymore. He lives it by nature. The struggle dissolves not because it has been conquered, but because it has been understood. And in that quiet understanding, the path continues, unbroken, steady, alive. The change is almost invisible at first. The way dawn doesn't announce itself, but simply begins. The man who once fought his own reflection now moves through his day with a strange, effortless rhythm. The same alarms ring, but there is no battle to rise. The same work awaits, but there is no weight pressing against it. Discipline, once a struggle to control, has dissolved into character. He doesn't summon it anymore. It breathes through him. What was once tension has become tone, the hum of alignment resonating quietly through every act. The sword that once felt impossibly heavy now glides as if pulled by intent alone. The master no longer thinks about grip or stance. He simply moves, and the motion is flawless because it is honest. The sword is no longer a tool. It has become an extension of self. In the same way, the modern man reborn through practice is no longer performing rituals for self-improvement. His body, mind, and routines have fused into a single current of being. He trains not to discipline himself, but to express who he already is. The real master has no discipline. He only has himself. This is a quiet revolution the world rarely notices. Greatness hidden in repetition, so natural it looks simple. Watch him now, not in grand gestures, but in minor ones. He pours his morning coffee with awareness, stands tall while reading an email, breathes steadily amid noise. His workout is deliberate yet serene, each repetition an unspoken affirmation. He shuts his laptop not in exhaustion, but in closure. Even rest has become part of his flow, not a guilty escape from productivity, but its silent partner. To the untrained eye, nothing dramatic has changed. The schedule, the tasks, the life, virtually the same. Yet beneath it all, something fundamental has shifted. Motion has turned to music. Effort has turned to expression. Once, he thought discipline required friction. He believed struggle was a price of consistency, that only through fight could he find control. But now he sees the paradox unveiled. Discipline is not the act of fighting chaos. It is becoming order. The mind once torn between doing and being is fused into harmony. There is no need to conquer distractions when one has transcended the desire to flee. Presence itself has become the defense. Every moment answers to purpose naturally, without the loud declarations of willpower. When identity stabilizes, behavior follows like shadow. This transformation does not feel triumphant. It feels quiet. The ego imagines transcendence as fireworks, but the real miracle is calm. The peaks and troughs of motivation flatten into a steady horizon. He no longer relies on external inspiration because internal order is self-replenishing. The old him, the man of oscillation, of guilt, of constant restarts, still echoes distantly, a voice fading into the mountains. But its power is gone. That self was a rehearsal. This self is a performance. The same laws that govern Musashi's blade now govern this modern rhythm. Simplicity, awareness, precision, humility. When the samurai trained, they didn't aim to strike fast. They aimed to strike true. Now, in his own ordinary spaces, this man does the same. True elegance is revealed in function performed without resistance. The world will call him disciplined. But he knows the truth. He has simply stopped abandoning himself. The endless restart cycle that once defined him has vanished because there is nothing external left to chase. This is transformation without spectacle, mastery without announcement. The hero's arc resolves inward, not outward, where identity and action have melded into unbroken flow. The rain still falls, problems still arise, but his reaction has changed. He moves with them, never against. He is consist, not because life has softened, but because he has stopped leaking energy into conflict with himself. Harmony has replaced effort. Grounding has replaced gambling. Presence has replaced pressure. As daylight dims once more, the soft silence returns. The man's eyes, calm and unwavering, now hold that subtle glint the samurai carried, a steadiness that needs no explanation. The narration lowers to a whisper, as if confiding in whoever still listens, whoever still wrestles with the chaos inside. The man who once tried to be consistent now simply lives consistently. The path is no longer a thing he follows. It is what he has become. Every journey that begins in noise must end in silence. You've walked through chaos, failure, repetition, collapse, and rebirth. You've seen yourself through the eyes of warriors long dead and realized that the battlefield was never outside, it was always within. And now, at the edge of your own transformation, one task remains. It is not another system or tactic, but a vow, something so simple that only the sincere can complete it. The samurai began each chapter of their lives with a declaration known only to themselves, a single phrase that captured their path, carved not for approval but for alignment. It was their anchor, their oath, the thread between who they were and who they would become. They did not chase promises, they became them. This is where your journey circles back to origin. What you must define now is your own path name. Take a quiet moment. Breathe. Let your thoughts pass until only the real intention remains. Then write one clean sentence. My path is, followed by the essence of how you will live. Not what you hope to achieve. Not what others should see. Just the law of your spirit phrase as truth. Maybe it reads, my path is precision, or my path is stillness, or my path is unbroken work. There is no correct choice, only honesty. Write it and let it stand as a vow, not a goal. Once written, do not decorate it. Do not justify it. Ink it plainly, as the samurai etch their code into consciousness. Keep it where your eyes can meet it each morning, not to remind you of what you must do, but of who you are. This sentence is your compass. It prevents drift even when storms rise. When doubt whispers, return to it. When the mind grows restless, read it aloud. Every repetition will carve the identity deeper until action and self become the same movement. The world around you will rush again tomorrow, timelines, opinions, noise begging for urgency. But you, anchored by your vow, will move differently. You will not hurry, you will advance. You will not chase, you will execute. You will not perform, you will embody. And in that subtle distinction, you will step beyond the 99%. This is not motivation. It is metamorphosis sealed in language. Your declaration transforms routine into ritual and transforms ritual into remembrance. So leave this lesson not with excitement, but with composure. Lower your shoulders. Exhale. Write your vow as though the ink itself were binding eternity to will. When desire fades and the world sleeps, the blade still moves, because the warrior has become the motion.